It is the second model introduced in the ZOIDS Fusers collaboration series of 2026, and the second alt form of the iconic Buster Fuhrer we got with those new Century collab. This is ZFZ01 Buster F, with a kit of Desolation Shot, Sway Claw, Drill, Flight Legs, and the leg ability of Stub, which buffs power of all parts when dodging or grazing successfully. Now, while the original Buster Fuhrer model focused more on ground control and staying as heavy shoot-oriented DPS as possible, this version of the Fury focuses a little heavier on the long-range effect, but also to a degree, also with close range in a way that makes him incredibly useful in both situations and just as deadly no matter how you choose to use him. Trading wheels for a new bird friend gives him a new eye for the skies and some new agility that no one has seen of his likes in a very long time. Desolation Shot on the head part is a shooting skill that has a number of rather interesting conditions to it, and if those conditions are met successfully, make it an extremely powerful and demolishing attack. It requires, first of all, 30 CG to use right out of the gate, so it makes it very similar to Emit Shot in some degrees. But upon consuming 30 CG, it grants Defense Ignore, Piercing, and doubles your power, making this extraordinarily painful and catastrophically destructive right out of the gate. But wait, there's more. If you manage to catch the target in heating with the part that they were going to use, much like a regular destroy action, it will instead bypass all damage conditions that I just listed and instead insta-break the part. This means it'll either be extraordinarily painful shoot DPS or instant free break and there's nothing they can do about it. Now, that second condition does kind of tie into metal natures and proper targeting to a degree, but honestly, trading 4K power for the chance to instantly break something, that's a pretty fair trade in my book, even if it is fairly expensive CG wise. Sway Claw on the right arm is a brand new skill and the only one that Buster F is introducing, but it's basically just a claw version of Sway Hammer on Smilo Lulu, where it will ignore defense but add the total combined value of the user's leg's evade stat to power 1-to-1. This scatter effect means it'll damage one part normally and then two others randomly for extra damage on top of that. But the defense ignore makes it extraordinarily painful, and then also the fact it ties the user's evade 1-to-1 to bonus power. So, naturally, the higher of an evade you have, the more powerful this becomes, much like the case was with Smilo Lulu. And given that he's got a very impressive evade of over 2300, he's definitely going to be packing some very powerful damage before modifiers if he goes to use this attack. Drill on the left arm, and the second instance of this ever being seen, as a currently still collaboration-only skill, is a melee attribute attack that will auto-target the closest enemy to Buster F, no matter who it is or how close they are to the line. Additionally, it'll also deal an extra 50% piercing damage on top of that if it manages to break something with its attack. So while this may not be something you want to start off with right away, if you are able to use this as, say, a finisher or a multi-breaker, then you can definitely really start packing on some damage. The only other drawback to Drill, however, is the fact that you cannot use it repeatedly, and it requires a one-turn cooldown before you can use it again. So ultimately, you will be focusing more heavily on Sway Claw, and if you have it, Desolation to a degree if you're able to use it, and only use Drill as you're able to properly break things on your turn, more than actually starting the fight with it. Flight Legs means that Buster F will have fairly solid coverage with a high emphasis on mobility and evade, with a decent overall terrain compatibility as long as he's not caught indoors. Naturally, this also does mean that he will have an anti-air weakness, which to a degree can be countered or culled, but still worth considering as a mental note to keep in mind. A base mobility of 1035 is off to a very good start in the speed department, as this means he already has a very good mobility before anything else has to touch it, which is par for the course with a lot of high flyers. An evade of 2338 is also very, very nice too, and also par for the course with a lot of high agility flyers, and ties very nicely with its ability of Sway Claw. So the higher this evade goes, the more powerful Sway Claw gets. And the higher your evade, the higher likelihood you're able to dodge your grade successfully if you're not in a no-dodge state, which then synergizes with Stub very, very nicely for some extra power. However, he does have a melee resist of 822 and a shoot resist of 796, which means that while he definitely has the power output and the high agility, he definitely is not quite packing the damage reduction to keep the damage as low as possible. So, a word of advice, try to keep him covered anytime possible with a shielder or a protector so that he can take as few hits as possible. Because even if they choose not to hit him with anti-air and nuke him out of the sky quickly, it's still going to be a mildly painful attack no matter which way you look at it. In the armor department, he is fairly light too, to a degree. Not exactly paper armor or glass cannon, but at least worth it for the sake of concern. A head armor of 4079, arms at 3419 apiece, and legs almost 3800. Again, he's fairly light on the armor, but trading armor and resist for high mobility and even higher evade does make itself back as long as you're able to do so. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate Buster F a pretty middle-of-the-road 6.5 out of 10. While he can definitely do what he's intending to do fairly well, and he has fairly good heating and cooling between high 500s the very lowest to low 800s the very highest, speed is definitely not a problem for Buster F. But overall, with the exception of Sway Claw synergizing with the flight legs and the high evade, his kit is kind of weird. While you can certainly use it as a mixed DPS either at close range or long, Desolation, for instance, requires CG to use, and there really is no CG sustain in his kit whatsoever, making using this kind of a chore. Drill is also kind of nice to have, but with the one-turn cooldown, you can't exactly rely on it super consistently, and you will have to very consistently break things with your attack, or you kind of waste about half your overall damage. And like I said, Flight Legs does mean he is susceptible to anything using anti-air effectively. As mixed parts, though, I do have to rate him a little higher at a 7 out of 10. While you can absolutely use Sway Claw and the Flight Legs extremely easily with any kind of build, you can also build around that with the rest of the kit and kind of round it out with some better overall synergy. And doing it this way will kind of make him a little easier to use. I.e., you can do the same thing with Desolation and pair it off with legs of, say, Auto Charge or someone with CGU Blow or something to give him CG very quickly so he can use Desolation more than once. And then Drill, again, it can basically fit anywhere, especially given it's not heavy, but you want to save this attack for when you're absolutely sure you're going to be breaking things. But also just bear in mind with that other warning, you cannot target in specific with Drill, it'll just auto-target whoever's closest to Buster F, period.